how can we work with industry organizations with all of the successes and the challenges that industry organizations themselves have? How can we work towards making sure that the impact of our industry organizations is actually felt at a local and provincial level? So I'm going to maybe start off and ask maybe Smangele from your side, maybe to introduce SWIFT as an organization, to mention some of the, the successes to start with, that you would say this is how SWIFT has succeeded over the last few months, over the last few years, and then to speak a little bit about your sense of the gap between the provincial development and how we can possibly start working towards intervening.
Thank you, Dr. Maima. I think let me start by introducing SWIFT and myself. So I'm also quite new. I'm literally a month old at SWIFT. And I'm excited purely because I think SWIFT is a representation of women's voice in the audiovisual space. I think as women, particularly in South Africa and globally, there's an opportunity for us to own the voice and collectively lobby for women's rights and for representation. I think the industry definitely needs a body that elevates and positions itself to drive and champion the woman's voice. So that's what SWIFT is. It's a 4-year-old organization. As I say, it's an NPO. We are funded by DSEC and the different organizations or agencies of government. We work with NFVF as well. So the organization is managed through a membership type relationship. So we've got members that sign on and they represent different sectors and different practitioners within the industry. I think the most important thing from a SWIFT perspective is that at this point in time, we've just appointed a new board. We are excited about, obviously, post-COVID, looking at ourselves as an organization and seeing how we spread our function. But most importantly is the footprint. I think looking at SWIFT currently, as you correctly say, we are only represented in the major cities. And one of the key drives that we are looking at is to actually have regional representation. So I'm excited to be here purely because I would like to invite female filmmakers and people in the industry to actually join SWIFT and to help us rebuild or reposition SWIFT in the organization purely as the woman's voice that represents what we can do. So it's a networking platform. There's a lot of conversations that are ongoing on a daily basis. We've got a WhatsApp group. We've got affiliations with film festivals. We are looking forward to actually increasing our visibility, and you will see in the next coming months, I think in the next quarter and the beginning of the year, there's a lot of activities that we are planning just to reposition and to own a space within the industry. I think one of the most successful things that I can talk about that I think everyone is really excited about is our SEO program. So SWIFT was one of the organizations that championed the Code of Good Practice regarding sexual harassment. So we are one of that organization that ensures that all production houses and all, let's say, practitioners and crew and actors have got an organization that actually champions their protection from a sexual harassment perspective. So we've got a program called the SEO. They're called the Safety Compliance Officers. And what these people do is they assist the industry, they assist both the production houses, but as I said, actors and crew who might feel that they need to learn about sexual harassment, or if they feel violated in the industry or in their workplace, they are able to contact an SEO to come and educate either the production or their organization. And I think from a SWIFT perspective, that is one of our key pillar, I think, project that we are very proud of, and going into the next few months, that's again another voice that we want to champion. We want to educate the industry and create a safe working environment for women in the industry. But it only does not speak to women only. We also want to invite affiliates and anyone who would like to learn about how to make their workspace safe for everyone that works in the industry, and particularly women, like I say. So that's one of the things that we are looking forward to driving. We are also partnering with a film festival upcoming, and by the end of the month. So I would encourage you to look at our social media. We are on Twitter. We're very active on Twitter. We've started reposting. And if you've got any activities and you would like to partner with Swift, we'd like to invite you to please contact us. Our website is going to be relaunched, but definitely on Twitter, on Instagram, we've got a WhatsApp group where practitioners have a conversation, share knowledge, they identify each other at sets and productions. So it's really a network to empower women and to grow and to transfer skills. I think one of the other key things that we do quite well is to host workshops. In the past month that I've been there, we've had about 6 workshops where we invite DSAC, we invite DTI, and we educate the industry. We educate developmental filmmakers and people who might not have the technical knowledge. So we also invite you to give us suggestions of what you'd like Swift to assist with. I think particularly from a Rustenburg Northwest perspective, there's a lot of conversations in terms of how Swift can assist. So I think I'll stop there for now. I hope I've covered.
Mangala, I'd like to come in, if you allow me at that point, and thank you very much for providing an overview. I'm going to ask you to later on at some point really go into the detail in terms of the differentiation of the primary objectives at Swift. I think there's first of all the gender parity and the gender equality issues at a career development level across the multiple disciplines in the industry, which goes into the historic imbalances around gender in particular and the specific initiatives that you've worked on in that space. But secondly, also, you were speaking about the actual scourge of, abuse on set, and maybe not even abuse to that extent, but also to the extent that there needs to be protection of not only women, but other alternate gender-oriented colleagues on the set as well, and that you've actually developed a program that is part of an international program and not just a local program. I'd like you to speak to that a bit in a while, but I think to introduce or to ask Tsanolo to speak then a little bit from a writer's perspective in terms of introducing the Writers Guild and the challenges of the organization as well as its successes. But like I said, maybe speaking to what your initiatives are specifically at local and provincial level.
Thank you, Ndate Maema. Like I said, Kinna Tsenolo Mabale. I am from the South African Writers Guild, but I think firstly, ke batla go introduce her as someone who originates in the Northwest Province. So Ndate Maema ha no bua ka Bophuthatswana, it's something that, well, the province as such, something close to home. It is home. So I think the Rustenburg Film Festival is a great initiative into the way forward within the industry, especially in the province. So the Writers Guild of South Africa is simply for writers and by writers. And what that means is we work on a membership basis where writers sign up onto the platform and become a member. The main aim of the Writers Guild is to protect, empower, and develop screenwriters, performance writers in the South African industry, film and TV industry. And when we think about screenwriters in any industry, whether it's radio in any platform, whether it's radio, whether it's film, whether it's drama, stage, you know, it always starts with a script. And that's really where the beginning of the whole thing that we see ultimately, the end product. It starts with a script. And for me, as a writer myself, I understand the importance of the screenwriter. And that's why at the Writers Guild of South Africa, the main aim is to protect, empower, and develop the writers in the thing. So maybe let me just delve a little bit in when we say develop the screenwriter. One of the ways in which that we've been doing in the Writers Guild, by the way, I've sat on the council for 2021, 2022, so I'm also pretty new as part of the council members, but as a writer, I understand the importance of it, and so one of the things is if we develop a writer, we have had initiatives where we've been training emerging screenwriters or people that are interested in learning more about what it takes to, you know, be a writer for the creative industry, for the film and TV industry. So what we've done is we've literally ran programs where throughout the 9 provinces where we train emerging writers in their own languages. So I was doing one, for example, Go Mafikeng, where we train emerging writers in Kasetswana, which was quite I think for me, an important initiative in that, you know, sometimes Sekgowa doesn't, you know, really delve into Sekgowa se na le go nna le beria, do you know what I mean? And I think this program, if it's being taught to people in their own languages and people are allowed to express themselves in their own languages, ultimately we would like to see, for example, somebody who are okweting script ka Zulu and submit it to SABC as is, right? Because what happens now is that we, you know, the standard is that we submit scripts in English, for example, and then they're translated. But anyway, well, it was one of the programs that we did, training emerging writers, and we really put in focus in developing the screenwriter in that way. When we say we protect, as the Writers Guild of South Africa, when we say we protect the screenwriter, one of the ways is in which, say you have a script, a short film that you've written, before you kind of take it to anyone else, some producers, you are able to go on our website and register your script. Meaning, once you've registered it, you have like a code, so to speak, where it gives you, it proves that you are the original producer of the script, writer of the script. So even if Uisa Kohoremo Lebadze as a producer, you can always prove that, no, but what I see on TV is my script, and here's the proof. Saleki registered March 2021, and your thing is now playing in December 2021. Because we know sometimes, you know, supposedly people steal concepts, but as a way to protect the screenwriter, you can go on our website and register your script. Therefore, it's one of the ways in which we aim to protect the screenwriter. And
Tanula, can I ask you to just take one pause?
Okay.
Because I'd like you to come back into the second part of the questions. Sure. But when you are speaking, then I think what I'd like you to maybe just to focus on when you continue is what you are beginning to speak about in terms of the difference between educating writers, creatives, around issues of rights, and that's the business side of writing, the management of their rights and how to protect their rights, versus the creative process in terms of how to write and what to write. And you also spoke specifically about something that is very close to my heart, which we spoke about at another panel yesterday at this particular festival with representatives from the Department of Arts and Culture at local level in the Northwest Province, where they were saying that it's even a challenge for actors from the Northwest Province who can't speak Nguni languages and cannot get acting role in Nguni languages. There is a culture of something, everything else. And as a result, there isn't enough content being produced in the other national languages. So I'd like you to speak to that when we come back, but maybe to ask Ntate Molebatsi to come in and to speak from a independent producer's perspective about what the role of the IPO is and the context in which independent filmmakers can become part of the IPO.
Oh, thank you so much, Limon. So, yeah, I mean, I think first off, I was just talking to Kia to say that it's amazing to see the Rustenburg Film Festival grow like this. You know, I think I showed Hear Me Move about 7 years ago, and every year it just seems to be growing and growing. So it's incredible just to see how the Rustenburg Film Festival is growing so expediently. But Nakalbitsuki Wandi Mulwati from the Independent Producers Organization, and the organization is something that's very close to my heart, and I think everyone on the panel will say the same about the organizations. But the IPO effectively is a producer organization, and what we do is we engage with the financial structures of making a film. So effectively what we're doing as the IPO is that we've got a lot of programs that are running concurrently, and you know, we talk about Swift and the safe rooms that we're trying to set up on sets, and we've got the Writers Guild, and we're talking about the IP exchanges with Netflix, and exactly how do we get to a point where IP gets protected. The IPO has got different subcommittees within the organization. I head up a subcommittee called Transformation and Diversity and Disruption, and mine really is to try and get the industry to transform. And it's incredible how much we've achieved and how far we still have to go. The film industry, as per the report the NFEF released last year, is a 5.8 billion rand industry. And of that 5.8 billion rand, about 70% of it is still going to predominantly white-owned companies. And what the IPO is doing now with the EXCO is that we're introducing a lot more black EXCO members, and we're trying to create ways to actually sustain a diversified and transformed supply chain in the film and TV industry. We also have subcommittees that deal with policy. And we are seeing now, I've got a talk at 3 o'clock, we're talking about the importance of the idea. And we're seeing that the companies like Netflix, Disney Plus, HBO, Prime Video are coming to the country, and they're starting to snap up IP. And what's important is that the IPO is starting to engage with the Department of Arts and Culture, the DTI, the Department of Trade and Industry, and the NFEF, of course, to say, how are we protecting the South African creatives? Because as we see what's happening in Germany and in Spain and in Singapore, is that the writers and the developers of IP are being paid every time that it streams on Netflix, and that's creating a huge amount of revenue that's flowing back to the creatives, which allows them to then create work and create a sustainable environment, if I can use that term. So the IPO is engaging with the DTI, the arts and culture, around those committees. But also there's a lot of work that's happening now. There are two things that Abutu from the FPB was talking about. There's a copyright amendment bill. There's a copyright. Sorry.
The sibilance is coming from the two mics because there's a connection on a computer as well. So whoever is connected on the computer must.
Hello? Oh, sorry about that. So the IPO is engaging with I lost my train of thought. Well, we're engaging with the.
Now I can't hear you.
I'm good. One good lanum.
Now I can hear you. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Oh, so the which is engaging with SWIFT and SAGA South Africa to say that SABC must start paying royalties not only just to the actors and the writers, but to the directors as well. And they're also engaging quite aggressively with Mzansi Magic to ask them the kind of content that they create. Can they start to diversify the black lived experience, because the black lived experience is not just the township, it's just not Kokasi, Risharipia Kukuning. There's more to us than we see very often on Mzansi Magic. And so there's a lot of work that's being done as well with Netflix and Disney Plus, because now they've set up quite hectic presence in Africa. And what that means is that the revenue that comes from streaming needs to be monetized for the creatives. And so the IPO is really in a transformative stage. We refer to ourselves as the wartime IPO because so many things are changing. And it's a very exciting time to be a producer and a creative in general, because now, before, when it was just SABC and Mnet, you've got so many other platforms to get your content onto. And that means that as creatives, we need to understand our legal rights to amortize that content. And we then take responsibility of also being aware of the contracts, And so from a developmental standpoint, the IPO are doing things like digital disruption and trying to get young kids to understand that what we've got in our pockets is a studio, basically. We've got editing software, we've got video footage, we can create stories from the things that are in our pockets. But more than that, we can actually start creating employment, film sets are incredible multipliers for employment. The SABC and the NFEF report, I think from last year, was that our economic multiplier is very similar to that of textiles and mining. And so what happens is that finally, the Minister of Finance, Ibrahim Patel, Gorongwane, are starting to consider film as a real way to create transformation, but also grow the economy. So the IPO has got a lot of really exciting things that we've got on the go. It's called IPO Organization online. Please check it out. We would love to get a more diversified membership base on our books. There's a lot of work to be done, but it's a very exciting time to be a producer. Thank you.
No, thank you, Wandile. And in the few minutes that I had an opportunity to see the video, I saw only the video of the three of you on the panel there. And I'd like to start off by saying I congratulate the spirit of youth in industry organizations. People like me have been working in this industry for over 25 years. And to see youth coming into industry structures and taking management and leadership positions in these industry organizations is very important. So I really would like to applaud Smangele and Tsenolo in yourselves as young film practitioners, taking the initiative to be part of industry organizations. And I'd like you to, as you speak now again, Ms. Mangele, particularly about the career development programs within SWIFT, to speak a little bit about why it is important to be a member of an industry organization. I'm saying that because it is a recent phenomenon that we have so many industry organizations that represent so many different disciplines in the industry, to cinematographer guilds, to writers guilds, to a organization that I'm a member of whose sole purpose was to ensure the transformation of the industry from a Black empowerment perspective that is called the Independent Black Filmmakers Collective. So, Smangele, as you speak to, I think, the career development programs within SWIFT, can you also just speak to the importance of why it is necessary to be a member of an industry organization?
Can you hear me now? Okay, is that better? Okay, so as I was saying, I think one of the key themes that SWIFT is going to be focusing on is just intersectionality and making sure we represent the diversity. So it's important, I think, as a practitioner to belong to an organization purely because there's power in numbers. There's a collective sharing of ideas and an opportunity to network so that it's either you learn from the collective, but also you share your own ideas in terms of how do we take the industry forward. SWIFT has got a pillar specifically that is focused on skills development, and that is where, as I mentioned before, we invite industry specialists that have walked the path. And I think there's an important element about learning. We all come from different, should I say, work streams. So it's important to be able to be conversant in the pipeline and know what the actual industry is about. So SWIFT definitely does skills development because we want to empower our members and women to make sure that they are conversant in the business of film and television and not only in their craft or their skill. So again, talking about transformation, Wandile mentioned the fact that the industry has previously been in 70% white-owned businesses. So we want to actually make sure that our members are confident enough to go into those spaces and access opportunities. So again, it's almost creating that access to opportunities and bringing knowledge to the collective so that they know what else exists outside of our own ambit. Wandile also speaks about the transformation of the industry, the digital growth, and the fact that platforms are no longer just television as in what I would call traditional broadcasting. There's a growth in digital streaming. So again, you want to empower members, you want to empower not only people in the urban areas, but exactly as we were saying, our key focus will be to grow members and taking that knowledge and that skill and that access to the different parts of the country. So I hope I've answered that question. I don't know if I've left anything else, but I think in a nutshell, that's basically what SWIFT is aiming to do.
Before anybody else comes in, Smangela, I'd like you to maybe just continue on another trajectory, specifically around what you would still say are the pitfalls. You know, what would you say are still some of the challenges that particularly women face in the industry? So for a young sister that wants to go into the industry and, very green, so to speak, what would be some of the most elementary elements that you would say, this industry is so, just know that. And SWIFT is here to help you, and you will get this information if you become a member of SWIFT.
Okay. I think one as SWIFT, as a brand, the sisterhood in SWIFT is one of the other most important key pillars. I think we've got a mixture of people that have got the knowledge, so that diversity in SWIFT, as you were saying, we are happy to represent the youth, but we've also got quite a deep sense of women that have worked in the industry, that started in the industry as youth, that have walked the path, that are able to then mentor young filmmakers and women in television. So one, again, from a skills development, it's that mentorship and being able to have access to someone who's walked the path, someone who's a SWIFT member who is actually currently dealing with the likes of Netflix, SABC, and looking beyond just the South African borders. I think that is a platform, again, where SWIFT wants to play a role, where we hand-holding and providing mentorship, but also the practical skills and giving that the channels to actually, how do you step by step, you spoke about the business of. It's not only about learning about your craft and the creative process, but also the business side of things. And I think purely because we've got that diversity of members, we've got the skills base, the collective skills base, any woman, whether again, mentorship, but we've got interns that come from formal institutions that come into SWIFT to learn the actual nitty-gritties. I think it's important to speak about how when you go to school, you learn practical things, but when you actually get onto the ground, there's a disparity. So it's always nice to have the support and to have someone to ask for support and an ear to listen to, both formally and informally, just in terms of advising, looking at those pitfalls. So I think SWIFT is that kind of network that provides that kind of support. So it's more about support and the sisterhood that is there. So you feel safe, you feel supported and empowered to grow, both from a career perspective, but also personally. Are you happy?
Before just, and I wanted you to speak about this because I think it's one of the things that, as a producer, we often find ourselves having to deal with this particular issue of specifically sexual conduct on set. And the reason why you would have, for example, as SWIFT, developed a program with international teams of making sure that, there's conscious engagement between men and women on set to say there's a limit between what can be done. We've seen people respond to adverts and we've dealt with these issues of couch casting, etc. And I've been part of moments that are very difficult in our industry when we've had to deal with these kinds of issues. Are you able to speak to that a little bit, please, Swangan?
I think, again, having touched on the SEO program, I think that is definitely one of SWIFT's proudest achievement in terms of having formalized a structure that is there to support. So the SEOs are actually practitioners that you can call on to come onto set to facilitate conversation. I think the most important part to speak about when we speak about sexual harassment in the workplace is the fact that it's a personal experience. If I feel that I've been sexually harassed and one dealer doesn't see it, he was joking, but I feel violated. We need to educate both myself and one dealer and the rest of the team in the production to sort of say there's boundaries, particularly in the workplace. And even when you shoot scenes, what is the correct etiquette? What kinds of movements and I don't know, physical contact that is considered professional and unprofessional. So I think SWIFT's, particularly that SEO, assists both the practitioners, the production houses, but also anyone, as I say, crew members, actors who might not be clear on what exactly it is that is sexual harassment. But I think it's important to have that support system that can actually be the sounding board, but to also normalize the environment so that everyone has a similar understanding of what it is and what it shouldn't be. So I think SWIFT plays a role, and the SEO program is accessible to everyone. It's literally a matter of inviting SWIFT, the SEO program, to come and train. So we do virtual training, we do physical on the set production at inception of productions. So that is how we then assist in facilitating understanding and making sure that there's consistency, but there's a professionalism in how, at least within the workspace, that matter is handled. I think, again, speaking about having the different sectors and agencies, it's having that codes that also defines it for the industry, so that everyone in the industry has got a common understanding, but also is an ambassador to make sure that sexual harassment doesn't happen in their productions or in their sets. So I think there's a drive to make sure that there's compliance, but also just to advocate for the elimination of sexual harassment in the workplace, which might have previously been, I don't know, if for a lack of a better word, a norm or something that happened but wasn't addressed. But now there's a formal channel to actually have the engagement and have the conversation and educate and create an awareness.
I just want to just jump in there with Luan, just because, in my past life when I was younger and better looking, I was an actor, and a lot of what I see SWIFT doing now is incredible. Like on the last set that I was, last coast of production, as an IPO member, just having access to the SWIFT and saying to them, look, I'd like SWIFT to just come onto my set and create a safe room, was very important. And I think what was important about that, creating that space, is that female crew, whether they're in the grips department or the lighting department, felt like there was someone they could go speak to, someone they could feel safe with. And another thing that is quite important to the IPO and SWIFT is also the other letters in the LGBTIQ community, you know, and I think it's a level of sensitivity that a lot of producers don't have. And just engaging with SWIFT has been so important for the IPO to understand that there's a certain way that men must speak to the makeup guy who's a guy, but he doesn't want to be referred to as a guy. And I think SWIFT has done incredible work there, and I just want to congratulate. I just had to jump on there because I've seen it myself as a producer, and really it's been incredible work. Well done.
Thank you for the endorsement one today.
No, thank you very much, Tate Molebatsi. I think Smangele couldn't have hit the nail on the head because the reality of it is that we are dealing with a global problem. We are dealing with a societal problem, and why we, as part of this discussion, said that it is important to have industry organizations. It is because those interventions are necessary. And we are seeing some of the changes that come as a result of the programs that have been implemented by SWIFT, both on set, but also the communication pieces that has been produced by SWIFT members to make that message very clear. So I thank you very much, Smangele. And I'll go back to Tsenolo in terms of the writers. And I'm going to start, Tsenolo, on your side. To go back to what I said is one of the things I'm the most passionate about. And it is this project that you were speaking about in terms of writing in indigenous languages. There is a Motswana poet by the name of Gafela wa Mahukudi Musimanoko Mahikeng around the corner there, who writes beautiful plays, who writes some of the most amazing poetry. And the gap between who wants to fund, who wants to even just fund the development of content in indigenous languages is almost as big as, Mawate, because at the moment, there isn't any specific programs in terms of funding indigenous language content. What would you say are some of the challenges that the Writers Guild faces in terms of finding people that have scripts in indigenous languages, but translating them into projects is always the biggest challenge?
Thank you, Dr. Maema. I think, the biggest thing well, maybe let me start here. Firstly, I think there are a lot of people that are there that write in their own languages and they exist. But and I know it because I saw it when we were doing this initiative here, training in indigenous languages. I think funding kind of organizations are starting to realize, of course, the importance of doing training, doing your own projects and writing scripts in your own languages. And I think the biggest thing is for us to realize this is the only one of the ways in which we will go. And I think funding opportunities, for example, the Department of Arts and Culture was one of our funders, and the National Arts and Council was one of our funders for this project, indigenous languages. So they are open to, funding writers and to write in their own languages. And I think it has been a previous challenge because this is the first time as the Writers Guild of South Africa doing such a training project in indigenous languages for emerging writers particularly. Really, I think if we have started doing this project, there are opportunities. So I would kind of encourage people to look at, the funding organizations that are there and say, I want to do my project in my own language because we live in a country where there are 11, 12 official languages. So, and I think maybe the previously it's been people not really understanding where if you write a project, if you write a script, for example, in your own language and where it's going to go to, because currently, like I said earlier on, the broadcasters are still the standard is getting scripts in English. And I think one of the important things, just to quickly say, so, that we are doing is speaking to the broadcasters that people should be able to submit scripts in any language. And these are some of the advocacy things as the Writers Guild that we're trying to do, where we're speaking to different broadcasters, to even government to say we have to change some of the rules, or help us in changing some of the white paper so that broadcasters can comply to people expressing themselves in the languages that they are most comfortable in. So it's one of the, if you say, challenges, but we are taking the challenge head on. But I'd just also like to add the importance of, so the Writers Guild sits, as we're sitting here as the IPO, it's SWIFT, it's the, there are many other organizations, and so we sit, so as all of us, we are the South African Screen Federation, SASFED, right? So where Writers Guild sits, SWIFT sits, IPO sits. And it's always important as affiliates or members within the creative industry to come together because, there's some things that as a writer, if I write my own script in Kasetswana, and then I take it to the producer who is like, no, I want it Kasekgowa, then there's no correlation then between us. So it's very important as all of us sitting here as organizations to, join together. So we're not silos, because from writing, of course, we know it's production and pre-production, ultimately to the final product. So if all come together as associations, as organizations, to say, if I get a script Setswana, I'm going to keep it like that. The actors would be Basetswana, but Baba Buan Setswana. I'm just saying, if there's correlation between all of us, then it becomes a little bit easier to fight some of these challenges that we find ourselves in, and especially when it comes to indigenous languages.
If I interject a little bit,
yeah.
Tanola, allow me to just interject a little bit and go back to a discussion, just to pick up on what you were saying, and go back to a discussion that we had yesterday around this particular issue of heritage and the importance of heritage. And what came out of that discussion, particularly in the Northwest, is the issue of, even after 25 years, a lack of policy. The changes that we are seeing and that we are benefiting, that I can proudly today sit at an industry panel with 4 young black, Mulibati, I don't know if you are still black, and that if you are still young, but to be able to proudly sit with a team of black creatives, professionals in the industry. It didn't exist many years ago. We had racial issues to deal with. But we developed policies, we developed programs to be able to make that change. And we are starting to see the results of that. But within a provincial level, there isn't provincial policy that therefore allocates resources, that therefore boosts the programs that you are working on. And I'd like to challenge you as the Writers Guild to say, please work very closely with the local government or local arts and culture institutions, with organizations like the Pan-African Languages Board. They need our insight. They have the same objectives, but they have not managed to bridge the gap in terms of developing policy and funding. But I'm in full agreement, and I really congratulate the Writers Guild on developing those indigenous language programs. I'd like to ask you one question, but to at the same time asking Tate Wandi Lemlebati to answer the same question without me intervening after your response. But it is the question with regards to the importance of the ownership of what you create and knowing your rights as a creator of content. Whether you are an emerging filmmaker, an emerging writer, or you are an established writer. Tate Mlebati spoke about the importance of intellectual property. And as industry organizations, we've been through a very long battle to even make sure that we change the law in this country to make sure that we are able to benefit from the work that we produce, and that the work that we produce is not consequently owned by someone else. Are you able to speak a little bit about the Writers Guild's programs and around IP ownership, and then also that if you can then pick up on that discussion as well.
Yeah, thank you, Ntate Maema. I think it's so important, for someone who, if you write a script, to kind of have ownership of that. So just to reiterate, the one thing that we do as the Writers Guild is that if you have written a script, and before you take it anywhere else, and this is in one of the ways in which we are always attempting to protect the writer, is that you go to our website and you'll see we've got brochures. I've kind of distributed brochures where you can go on. It's the script registry on our website, where you enter all the details and you submit your script, and that it gives you. It generates a code where it's your copyright, right? You are covered in that sense. So no one can actually use your script and claim that it's theirs, because you have the proof right now. And it's one of the ways in which the Writers Guild tries to protect the writer as such. But I think the biggest thing also going beyond that in terms of then what are the benefits after that, and I think it's one of the things that Mulebati spoke about as one of the the IPO they're trying to do. How does the writer also benefit after that, after you've written your script, after it's protected? How do you kind of make a living beyond the script? And I think it's one of the conversations that the Writers Guild itself is having with different broadcasters, Netflix. I think we all kind of sit on the same as SASFED, trying to look at all these bills that ultimately will protect the creative from the writing perspective all the way through till the final product.
Thank you, Butlibone. It's very frustrating when you just discuss the idea of indigenous languages. I want to make an analogy. There's a show that's just come out on Netflix called Squid Games. And Squid Games has gotten incredible amounts of streams. It's number one in France, Singapore, all at the same time. And the thing about this show is that it's actually a South Korean show. And what shocked Netflix was the fact that this show did so well, and the writer and the producers and the directors refused to dub it in English. And so what they did is that they actually subtitled the whole series. And they were convinced that it was never going to work. It's going to be a little art house thing, never span. And actually it did so well. And what was heartbreaking about that story is that the writer, director, and the producer only got one fee. The fee that they got was what they got, and that was it. And it's one of the most frustrating things having to engage with the broadcasters, because you're like, so Kostov did a film project called Ikani, which was like the first Isindebele drama series. And again, there you see the kind of desire that South Africans have for their own languages, and it's frustrating because broadcasters will only do it once they've seen it. And they always want to be like, no, wait, can we just try it in isiZulu? Can we make this character Xhosa? And you're like, they're not just Nguni-speaking people in this country. There's a plethora of other languages that we just don't represent. And I think to answer your question, Abutlibon, it's become one of the things that the IPO is fighting along with SWIFT and SASFED, and Writers Guild of South Africa at a SASFED level, to say that the stream has got a monetary value, and therefore we want to have the writer, the director, and the key forecast in the film benefiting from the revenue of that stream. Now it's an incredibly difficult battle because and what happens is that Literally, because what happens is that the Netflix will then agree to that in Germany, or they'll agree to that in France, but they won't agree to it in Korea and Portugal and other countries. But they'll agree to it in European countries where they feel like they know that they won't get anywhere. But Portuguese content that's in Brazil, they don't get a revenue share. South Korean content doesn't get a revenue share, and yet you ask yourself why. And literally, it's about us coming together and being a united voice. That's one of the things that the IPO has done with SASFED, is that we're starting to speak to government as a unified voice, because government gets frustrated when they have to talk to each organization as the peak, you know, whereas the mining industry is very coordinated. And when the mining industry or the alcohol industry or the smoking industry goes to government, they say, look, reduce the lockdown. They have to do it because they all speak at one voice. And I think what's happening more and more is that people are starting to realize that if we speak as one voice, as creatives, we can get these broadcasters not only to lose money, but to be fair. We're just asking them to be fair. And indigenous languages are becoming so important. And I can't explain it enough. It's so important for us to write ngesiXhosa, isiNdebele, because actually when you translate into English, you lose something. And that's just the reality of it.
There's someone, let me just pick up on something that you said, if you allow me to. I come from I've worn many hats. And even though we try to speak with one voice, we have different challenges, right? So the challenges between what Tsenelo was speaking about in terms of the writer ensuring that they own their property once they've produced, and the relationship that they have with me as a producer who wants to then buy out all of the writers' rights so that I as a producer can own them to be able to then go and exploit them. But then I get the money from a broadcaster that is not interested in me owning a single percentage of that intellectual property because I can't afford to pay for it. So they then have a outright ownership. You look at just the most popular content on our screens at the moment in terms of the telenovelas. You have over 20 telenovelas that are on screen at the moment. A telenovela costs in the region of and a year to produce just one. When these corporations speak about this billion rand that they are investing in the industry, over 60, close to 70% of it goes back into their pockets because they then own that content, are able to dub it and to sell it across the world, whereas we are left with the 10 to 15% that is drama and maybe documentary. What are the challenges, what are some of the solutions, rather, that the IPO has come up with in terms of mitigating this process? And there are lots of successes to speak of in that sense. So are you able to just highlight why the IPO has been so steadfast on this issue that even though we are not necessarily as different clusters of the industry concerned about ownership of the same rights, we all have to be behind each other within SASFED to make sure that we are able to speak as a collective voice?
Hey, thank you for that question, Abudlibon. You know, it's one of the issues that the IPO, along with our SASFED colleagues, have been fighting for a very long time. There's this perception that, just to go into like industry speak, and I apologize if I lose anyone, but like there's something called like an indie film, and there's like a union film. So an indie film is a film where there's no union, there's no SAG, or there's no PGSA, and basically what happens is that the broadcaster can pay you whatever they pay you, and you have to take it because that's what they've got. Whereas in a country like the UK or in Los Angeles, for example, there's a Screen Actors Guild. And if an actor is a part of that guild, you're going to pay them that rate. There's a minimum, there's a range, obviously. Like, you're not going to pay Brad Pitt the same as a new guy that just started. But once you're part of SAG, there's kind of a base that you have to pay people. And it broke my heart when Usis Vatiswa had quite a public fight, Lintate Shona, about how much he was paying them. And what you're asking, Abudlibon, speaks to the commissioning model that we've inherited from apartheid. And I don't want to become political and be ethereal in my answer, but ultimately what we have adopted as producers and writers and actors is a commissioning model. So what happens is that SABC says they've got 4 rand to make Muvango. They give you 4 rand, and the producer must get everything for that 4 rand. He must get the writers, he must get the actors. No matter what happens, he's got only 4 rand. So whether he, no matter what he pays Usis Fatiso or anyone else, give 4 rand, you know. Whereas what's happening now is that companies like AAA, companies like Indigenous, companies are actually starting to create pre-sale agreements with the big streamers. And what that allows for is for us to participate to some degree in the back end. And what that ensures is that we can create content and then have agreements with agencies, with TOPs to say, look, from the back end that I get from this, I will then pay you this amount. Where it becomes difficult is just in the accounting of it, because obviously most production companies are very small. Like, for example, Cold Stove, Re5, you know, it's myself, Kitty, and there's 5 of us trying to make this thing happen. And of course, when we get into production, we then scale up, if I can use that term. So then we hire in a line producer, yada, 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 and we get to maybe 60, 70 people. So the challenge becomes then, once the show plays for the first time on Netflix, how do you get an accounting system that then monitors Netflix to make sure that they pay you the right amount that you can then pay Uvatiso? Now that kind of admin, a big studio like Marvel or Miramax or they're countless. They can manage that because they've got a whole department of 15, 30 people that are just doing accounting. And your question about Libon is so important now, because we need to realize that everyone is looking at the continent, because people are tired of seeing Paris. We're tired of seeing New York. We're tired of seeing LA. We're tired of hearing those stories about white people all the time. We want to see different stories. Even if it's stories that are of white people in Africa, people want to see that. There's a story that has not been told, and we are trying to find ways to engage with these broadcasts and say, look, we're not just a place where you can just dump money and you can get content, premium content, by the way, because just as an aside, South Africa's got a very, very developed film and TV industry. Our crew are incredible. And you ask any director who's shot here, what's his name? Ridley Scott, or any other director that's come and shot in South Africa, they can't believe the quality of crew that we have here. And so what's happening is that these streamers are coming and getting content that is premium at a very low cost. It's a very long fight, and the IPO is in it for the long game, because ultimately there's a global standard that we are engaging with that we must get to. We can't be treated as this dark continent and they can just do us as well, because it's Africa. Just pay them what they're going to get paid and they must do with it. The IPO is working with SASFED, with SWIFT, with the Writers Guild of South Africa, with IBFC, with the Animation Guild of South Africa, to say, look guys, we have to get to a standard that we can start engaging with these people on, because if we don't do it, they're going to exploit us. It's literally about collective bargaining, which these broadcasters hate with every bone of their body, because as a collective, as you said, we're very strong. Because once we say, no, this is the price for an actor, they can't change it. We all agree, and we don't care what they give us on the side. We say, no, this is the number that we want for that actor. And then we become stronger. I don't know if Ka'araba would do a little, but it's a fight.
If you allow me to just come in there, particularly because we've got up to 11:30 have been informed for this panel, and we've just been joined also by the chairperson of the organization I mentioned earlier as the IBFC, which you've also mentioned. And I'd also like to allow for some questions from the people that are in the room as well.
Okay.
So before I just allow Azania to just come in, I just want to talk on something that you mentioned, and it's the fact that business models are definitely changing, but those business models don't change themselves. It is as a result of us as industry practitioners, as industry organizations, independently and collectively, lobbying to change policy, to negotiate better terms. And it is about being there, being present, actually being a practitioner. And so for the people that are in the room, I think the takeout from primarily what Wandile was highlighting is the fact that although we've walked the journey and you are seeing an improvement, there is still a lot of work that still needs to be done in terms of changing the regime of intellectual property ownership and making sure that whether it is the writer or the producers end up benefiting as most as possible from the content that they create. And on that note, I'd like to ask my sister, my chairperson, to please introduce herself, and to Azania, the way that we've just ran the format was that everybody just introduced their organization and took 2 minutes to just say why the organization exists and why it's important. So I'll just give you just 2 minutes to do that, and then we will then go towards the next session.
Yeah, I think first of all, apologies for arriving late. I think there was a mix-up in terms of the time, so I really apologize to everyone in the room. My name is Azania Mwendani, and I'm a co-chairperson alongside Magantri Pillay in Cape Town of the IBFC, Independent Black Filmmakers Collective. And really what we are is a collective of, Black business people and professionals within the film industry. It's not limited to just producers, it's really the value chain. And it's important that we mention the value chain because there's this fixation on just the film, us as a collective of people. But we're also saying, how do we get other Black businesses involved within the space of filmmaking, right? So it's that collective. So our aim is really just to encourage entrepreneurship and encourage pivoting within the creative space, and also to make sure we lobby for opportunities and lobby for the right kind of transformation within the industry. So that's what the IBFC really is about. We started in 2018. We've been around now for about three or so years, and I think that our influence has been quite big, such that now we are called into to make sure that that state gets the Black voice. We are now engaged on international issues in terms of inbound work. And we're also engaged in terms of how do we actually do training? Because we are not, Black people are always seen as perpetual trainees. How do we actually make sure that we go through an entrepreneurship kind of process to move away from somebody who's been in the industry for 20 years, still called a trainee, still called an emerging Black filmmaker? Those kind of things are things that we are lobbying to make sure that those kind of titles are changed and the Black presence is experienced within the value chain. The value chain is not just about creativity. The value chain really is about ownership of props, ownership of IP, yes, the creative IP, ownership of business models, ownership of financial instruments within the space, being insurance within the space, being legal within the space, and also the rest of the creative environments. That's what IBFC is.
No, thank you very much, Azania. As you speak about the value chain, we had an interaction with a couple of colleagues during the week, and they were talking about the process of the import and export of a particular light and a cabal that particularly existed and was trying to say, you can't bring in this light. We are the only people in this country that has been bringing this light into this country. You are now starting to eat into a market share. All that my friend and colleague did was that they went directly to the client in China of those lights, daylight at 12 o'clock midnight, and they have 11 of those lights as a Black gear producer. And I think that is the space that when you speak about the value chain in its entirety, as you are referring to say that it's not really just about producing or writing. It is about studios, it is about facilities, it is about having the Black lawyers in our space, Black accountants, being able to take care of our projects as well. And the IBFC is a collective of all of those. Okay, thank you very much, Azania. I think on that particular note, Tate Mulibatsi, Tsenulo, and Smangele, if you allow me to, just for the last 5 minutes, to just find out if there are any specific questions that some of the people that are in the room may have that I may not have highlighted.
So if I might just say something very quickly. So when we had a meeting with the Minister of DTIC, we did raise the issue of competition within the film space. that is a space that needs to be looked at. And by virtue of them now changing the name to DTIC, we do hope that the department will look seriously into the competitiveness within the value chain and make sure that there is true transformation in that space as well. Yes, they deal with incentives and rebates, but I think that because of the competition elements that are barriers to entry within the country, we do call upon the DTIC to really look at how do we then, as IBFC, start working within transformation within the competition space, not just about the incentives. I know there's a film unit, but within that unit, please can we look at the competitive environment within the value chain? That's where true transformation will start. Economic transformation will definitely take place.
No, and I think that for the people that are attending the festival physically, who Azania maybe and Wandile please come in, maybe very young. The point is to say that the industry has changed. When you're thinking of careers in the film industry, really go, like, it's not just about it being a DOP or just being a creative anymore. There's so many other elements of this industry, from dubbing, subtitling, creating the lights themselves, you know. So I think we need to have a broader view of our industry. So I understand that if there are no further questions, I'm going to then allow just a few closing comments from the panelists, but specifically going back on where we started this discussion to say the gap in terms of the three provinces that produce the 70% of the content that we see on our screens needs to be closed down by making sure that the other provinces, the Northwest, the Eastern Cape, the Northern Province, Limpopo, they also produce their own content. So I'd like to, in giving your closing remarks as organizations, to just speak to how you are planning on, especially, or for example, in the Northwest, localizing and regionalizing some of your programs.
Mr. Mayema.
Wandile, do you want to start? Maybe let's start with Smangela from Swift.
Mr. Mayema, can we have at least one or two questions before you go to Smangela, please?
Oh, we do have questions in the room. Then let's take the questions in the room before we go to the closing remarks, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Millicent. I am an actress, and I've been in the industry for a very long time, since 2007. And I've acted in quite a lot of productions. And it's actually me acknowledging or appreciating the fact that we're here today. I'm going to talk about Swift. I follow Swift on social media. And I'm so happy now knowing that we do, as women, have someone to talk to, because we've been through a lot in the industry where you find a man just coming and saying, oh my God, I love your bums. Or maybe even touch them, you know. And you are like, but this is not right. But you're saying it to yourself because you have no one to talk to. In the industry, we are scared of producers because we want jobs. And we know that if a producer is doing something to me, there is absolutely nothing that I can do or even complain, because what usually happens in the industry is that once you complain, you will never get jobs anymore. You know what I mean? So you don't know whether, should I address this? Should I keep quiet? Because I need a job, and jobs are scarce, you know? I heard you, Ausmangele. Don't mind me and my voice today. I heard you speaking about the fact that there's a WhatsApp group. I think you spoke about a WhatsApp group. I don't know if that's what WhatsApp group is for all females in the industry or just specific people who are maybe directors or producers or whatever, or if it's for yeah. I have more questions for all of you, but the first one is that for Ausmangele Swift.
Thanks for the question, Millicent.
Thank you, thank you. I think, Smangele, you can just maybe offer a direct response. I think that was a very direct question.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mayim. So you're correct. The current WhatsApp group is made by members. So it's a conversation between the women members. So they exchange conversation and ideas, as I said. It's a networking platform. So I think I would encourage you, if not already a member, to actually join SWIFT to find out about our programs and to get involved in the conversation and raise your lived experience as you talk about. I think one of the biggest things that often comes up, particularly with sexual harassment, is the privacy and the confidentiality and the fear of speaking out. And I think one of the key messaging that SWIFT wants to start talking about is that the SEO program is an independent program. So you have the assurance that it's a safe environment, it's confidential, and it's private, and purely because that person is an affiliate of SWIFT, but they're not within SWIFT themselves. So I think your case matter becomes then handled on merit. But one of the things that we're also looking at is the education in terms of what then happens when you've got a case and how do you educate the complainant about the process and the legalities and how far it needs to go. So we're looking into a partnership that we'll be going into market about with the WISE Collective, where we actually create that environment where you've got the, for lack of a better, assurance that the privacy and confidentiality is maintained and that your case is taken as far as it needs to go. So I hope that answers your question, but I would really like to encourage anyone who is not already a member of SWIFT, who's a female, to actually go onto our social platforms, look at the types of conversations, and join up for membership. So we will be doing campaigns to drive membership. And Tata Mayema, without going into the closing remarks, I think one of the things, if you may allow me, is that we will, as SWIFT, be striking, I think, a formal relationship with the Rustenburg Film Festival, where we then set up a representation in Rustenburg, in the Northwest, and to see what kind of programs we can put in place going into the future.
Thank you, Smangele. I think let's give Tenulo. And no, rather, you said there was another question.
Yes.
You said there were two questions in the room.
Yes, I still have more questions.
Okay.
Tate Mulebati, I was privileged enough to work with you in one of the shows, Guild. What saddens me about our industry is that you see your show repeating again, and on the SABC, Kai, and you as an actor, the producers, the writers, everyone is not getting a cent from that, and people are thinking we are rich because we are watching Guilt again, or you get someone from Zambia, someone from Zimbabwe saying, "Hi, I'm watching you now on Mobango," and you find that I'm not even on Mobango anymore, but someone is still watching me today, and yet I'm not even getting sent from the monies that are I get to write visa. But I don't know, I'm just glad to be listening to what you're saying, because these are the things that you guys are fighting for, so that Lerena as actors are able to get something back from the work that we've put in. Because I've had a lot of shows, Vele, that were repeated and repeated so many times on these channels, and nothing came to my pocket.
It's one of those battles that we're having with. So there's a broadcast subcommittee within the IPO that's run by Luke Rouse and Katlego Ramapakela. And the amount of contracts that they read every other week with broadcasters trying to change this and that and trying to make it very opaque, if I can use that term, is incredible. I know the Writers Guild of South Africa has done a lot of good work with Maria Mrazikakis at SABC about repeat fees for writers at the very least. We've had some victories there. We still need to fight those fights. The biggest issue is Abu Libon actually touched on the fact that our shows often get sold again, and there's no line of sight of where it's going. There's a whole other Mnet that we don't know about, that TX is in a different language, and Portuguese and all these kind of languages, and it's a real fight around IP. And the IPO is engaging with a lot of IP lawyers to say, look, how do we get fair representation in these contracts and these transactions? And it's a fight that we are still having. So it's noted.
No, I'd like to just add one thing to that and say to you that I remember a particular case in the year 2011, and this whole issue of industry at a standstill. And we remember what consequently happened with that, because some of the broadcasters actually put in a new clause to say that until our government changes the law, they will not change the law and they will not give actors residuals. Strangest of things, that is one of the broadcasters that has produced the highest number of hours of content in the last 10 years. And so it has locked out 10 years of residual rights that would have been earned, and that would possibly be earned in perpetuity, because it will not allow it to work backwards. So you will not be allowed to, when the new law comes in, to still earn residuals for the period that that law that they are saying must not be put in place, has not been effective. So it is a systematic process that has been in place for many years to take away the rights from the creators of the rights, from the creator of the rights, who would be able to exploit them in future. Industry organizations have been working very hard. The Actors Guild, who are not represented here, have been working very hard on the performers bill. So I'm just saying to the group and to the team that's sitting in the room there to say, please do join industry organizations. Please do participate in this process of making sure that you individually contribute towards changing the industry, because it's not just, there's a lot of policy work that still needs to be done to be able to get where we need to. I am asked to please wrap up. So I'm going to then ask Azania I'm going to ask that maybe we just structure the closing remarks in the way that I'd asked it. Your provincial or localized plans as industry organizations, and we can go in the order that we started. So Smangela, I think that you had already begun speaking to some of the things that SWIFT will be doing with Rustenburg Film Festival. So please continue on that, and then hand over the baton to the next one until we end up with Azania.
So yes, I think ultimately at the end of the day, it's exactly that. It's identifying organizations and formalized structures in the Northwest that we are able to engage and strike that relationship with, but also just to grow our footprint and our membership, so that when we plan, for example, the next festival, we are part of curating the program and ensuring that we are able to contribute to represent women's interests in the program. So I also would like to also then make it an open invitation to everyone that's sitting in the room to actually reach out to SWIFT to see how we can work together in growing SWIFT's footprint in the Northwest. So yeah, I think that's how far I'll take it. Tsenelo, ladies first.
Tsenelo, me and you are going to make sure that this indigenous thing happens in the Northwest Province. Please, your closing remarks on behalf of the Writers Guild, please.
Yeah, and I think in Tata Mayama, that's exactly it. Indigenous languages, I think we've already started it in terms of the training thing that we do. But I think the biggest thing is always, sister, so I'm saying to you, the Writers Guild is there for Batobamochaye, of course, throughout the country, but really, I want to stress the thing that some of my colleagues have already said about membership. So membership benefits, of course, yes, the writer, for example, But what makes it easier for us, say, as Writers Guild, as SASFED, as all the organizations that are here, Haria, for example, Rebata change a policy on, say, a writer's fee or go to the broadcasters, and they say, okay, who are you with? How many members do you have? It's obviously better to say, no, we have 10,000 members instead of Baba 1,000, 100, because, you know, I mean, we've all seen it. We all know the unions that exist in our country. There is strength in numbers. Please do go look at the Writers Guild of South Africa. But for example, I'm also a member of SWIFT, a paid member at SWIFT. So there's always, I believe, there's always a great thing in strength in numbers, and I mean throughout the different organizations, because we serve different purposes. Mari, we are all part of the same, you know, structure that we're trying to improve within the creative industry. So please do that, go to become members, and any questions, of course, we'll do that. And in terms of how we then engage more provincing, I think as the Writers Guild, we are, yes, it'd be great to engage with the departments locally, provincially, and really look into developing our own stories, because there are many storytellers in the province.
Much appreciated. Thank you very much, Tenolo. I think you must speak to those Makhuakwa IPO. They must transform, man, and they must transform more rapidly. On behalf of the IPO, sir, I've just put you on the spot there. Your closing remarks.
Yeah, no, yeah, thank you. I think on behalf of the IPO, for us, we are really honored to be here, but also we are actually wrapping up an MOU with Department of Tourism and Department of Arts and Culture to roll out a film tourism model. And just quickly, elevator pitch is that we've all watched The Hobbit, and we all know how much tourism has gone to New Zealand as a result of The Hobbit. So we're trying to engage the different tourism boards, primarily in the Northwest and KZN, to actually encourage us to make films in our provinces, to encourage people to come and visit Sun City, or the Pilansberg, Zirast, and by using film, encouraging tourism, which is also an employment driver. I think I need to amplify what my colleagues are saying, and mine is to ask that please can you join the IPO, because I'm also a member of the IBFC, and I think what's being said is very important, that we can't work in silos, because what investors tend to do is that they try to divide and conquer, whereas if they know that we're united, they can't break us down. So please check out IPO.org.za. We need you to join. We need you to be a bona fide member, and we also need to hear some of the requests that are being sent to us by members. For example, we had a webinar that we've just done on short films, and that was as a result of members saying to us, look, can you guys organize a webinar where we talk about short films and how that model works and how you amortize that model? So please join the IPO. Thank you so much for inviting us. It's been a very good conversation.
Thank you very much. And in closing, then I'll ask Azania to just give closing remarks. But Azania, I'm going to prompt you and ask that you please give not only a local provincial perspective, but also the IBFC's Pan-African and global diaspora collaboration perspective as well, to just close this gap and say, what are the opportunities for young filmmakers in Rustenburg if they become part of the IBFC?
Okay, thanks for it. Let me start globally, right? So what we've noticed is that around the world, there is the first two words, independent Black filmmaker, appears in the US, Independent Black Filmmaker Network. In the UK, is the Independent Black Filmmakers Organization, which already says that there's some form of symbiotic opportunities for us as a collective to already kind of join forces with that kind of global grouping of Black filmmakers, right? And they have the very same kind of ethos to say it's not just about, the immediate kind of set value chain, but also about the broader value chain. So we're tapping into those networks to make sure that we do, the UK are a co-producing partner. So it helps us to start really co-producing and accessing incentives on both sides that are made very specifically in the UK for what they call minority groups. And then in the US, also minority groups. The US, we don't have an official co-production treaty, but we do have co-production opportunities, right? And in South Africa, we have the Black Filmmakers incentives, which you can tap into, and the international locations incentives. So those kind of things are happening globally. From a diaspora point of view, we are also tapping into the different festivals that are specific to Black filmmakers and Black and showcasing our talents within that space. When I bring it down when I bring it locally to South Africa, it's about working with, for instance, Rustenburg Film International Film Festival, same with DIF and any other platform, to make sure that we speak to issues of our nature, which is transformation, and we also start speaking to how do we activate all of that. In Rustenburg, what we are doing nationally is IBFC is a national organization, and we are very excited to have on our board members from KZN and from Western Cape, which starts to really break down the barriers that we used to have, because all our board previously were from Johannesburg, trying to represent a national narrative. And what we want to do for the Northwest Province is to make sure that we onboard more members. So we're saying, please, be part of our membership and help us to grow. I mean, we do have member meetings every month. We get really great ideas from them, and so we really want to do that network. But I don't want us to limit it just to the festival. For us, how do we then encourage a month-by-month program within each province? And see, and with the activation that the festival has done now for the local community of film production, how then can we do a month-to-month Northwest specific? We have to infiltrate the regions. I think that there are 5. How do we make sure that we go Klerksdorp? How do we make sure we do go Mafikeng? Well, how do we make sure we do Rustenburg, the main cities within the 5 regions, to be able to then do the work that we need to on the ground? Yes, we understand it's filmmakers, but how do we then say to the local, the provincial office and the city offices, what do you need? Is it about positioning Northwest as a location and services space? Can we possibly build a studio? There's so much space there. How do we not try and make it a Johannesburg? Let's make Northwest, activate the gems of Northwest space. With space, how do we activate the gems, which is sunlight, heat? There's so many things. You guys have an airport next to an ESCOM, next to a tel. How do we activate those nodes and make sure that if people want to, we are using what we already have? How do we then say to tourism within the Northwest Province, tourism, Dam, what do you want us to do with that? How do you want that to feature in your storyline? Because for us, transformation is not just about skin color, transformation of ideas, transformation of what you have within your province, and transforming the tourism narrative into film tourism. Those kind of things are what we're talking about when it comes to transformation, and we want the Black filmmakers and Black production and Black value chain to lead that level of tourism. It's a very global tourism. Please don't limit it just to being Black. I understand that you, as a Black person, you're a majority in this country. You should, and you do have the obligation to lead transformation across the value chain. Make sure, from the province, go knock on the doors, go to education, go to libraries and say, what stories do you have that people, folk-lit stories that we can unlock? Go to libraries and get those books and unlock them and start doing that with libraries and work with the libraries in the province, work with education, work with social development. There's a lot of films that have been done about GBV, which is very important. How do you work with social development to develop the stories? Don't just sit in your room and think, I'm going to tell a story. Go and work with them and transform the thinking within the departments to help you to make your films and create an environment that is conducive to filmmaking. Because like they say, build and they will come. Don't expect Johannesburg to now say, oh, let's go over there. No, build the environment, buy the equipment, create a hub, create an equipment hub, create those hubs where build, they will come. What's his name? Sun City. He built Sun City. Guess what? We come to Sun City. So those are the kind of things I'm saying. Build, we will come.
Thank you, Azania. You couldn't have I think, close this session, Azania, on a more relevant and passionate note. I would like to thank the panelists. Thank you, Azania. Thank you, Wandile. Thank you, Smangele. And thank you to Tenolo as well. But thank you to the organizations that you represent, to your members and to your excos who continue to put in a lot of effort to represent a lot of us. I particularly want to thank Kia as the founder and the leader of this festival. And to close by saying, I think what Azania was saying, that this is about activism, man. This is not about just sitting there. It's not just about the passion. There's a lot of activism, and possibly that will be followed by a lot of profit eventually. But we started this discussion by saying, in 1994, you would have been sitting in Buputatswana. You are now finding yourself in a different place. In 1994, you had Bob TV and Bob Radio. Now you are busy selling off the assets, including the residences. You have a big challenge. We've done a lot of good, but at the same time, there's still a lot of gap. And in that gap, I think we believe there is a lot of opportunity. So for the young filmmakers that are sitting in that room, I'm going to say, please be motivated by the people that are on stage, online here, to go and be active. Go and tell your stories. Go and ask the questions. Go into the libraries, like Azania was saying. Go and speak to the people at the Department of Arts and Culture, and let's continue to build a successful film and television or audiovisual industry in the Northwest. And on that note, I hand over to Yvonne and Kia, and I hope that the people in the room have found this discussion useful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Maema. Re a leboga. Before we go, there's other questions from people. No, we'll give them this. You had a question, sir, that you needed to ask them?
Dumelang bagaetsho. Ke ne ke se ke neetse ke re ka ntlha gore I'm not known na ka tshwanno botsa dipotso. But well, ke rata go bua Setswana, although se ja tlhapile sona ke a se itse. But ke rata go bua Setswana, and if you are a vendor or another indigenous speaking person, please bear with me. I'm in the Northwest. I'm proud of Setswana. Firstly, I'd like to say that Wandile, this question is actually for yourself. Renale content is submitted ko the broadcasters. Then after being submitted to the broadcasters, the